Well, I think that there's two surveys. There's the unemployment rate, then there's the establishment data, which is jobs created. And the unemployment rate, those data have just been revised because they revised the population totals. But what's really important to focus on is the establishment data and the jobs created. There was 143,000 jobs created, which is why the market is looking down on this. But it's not so much the number of jobs. It's that they were all in low-paying or government sectors. So if you look at manufacturing, tiny gains, losses in oil, losses in mining and logging, in motor vehicles and parts, when other countries want to buy our oil. And you have President Trump who says he wants to sweep away regulations, have lower electricity prices, have faster permitting to allow those high-paying jobs to come back to the United States. And that's what's important, that American workers have the upward mobility they need through these higher wage jobs.
Well, when we consider, though, some of these lower wage jobs and different sectors of the labor market in which migrant labor specifically is relied on, how are you thinking through the deportation effort that is underway and has been accelerating in the last few weeks, and how ultimately that's going to trickle into the labor market?
Well, we see that the labor force participation rate is still lower than it was before the pandemic. It has not regained its pre-pandemic levels. So there are plenty of American workers who want to do many of these high-wage manufacturing jobs that we're focusing on. The point is to bring these high-wage jobs back to America. There are plenty of American workers who want to do them.
So there won't be any labor shortages with those roles that American workers may not be so eager to fill.
There's paths for legal migration, and President Trump has always said he wants legal migrants. So if there are job openings, if there are gaps in the labor force, there's plenty of scope to bring in workers who want to come legally, who have been waiting for years and years, Kaylee, to come into the country. Why shouldn't those workers come and do those jobs that are needed rather than people who just walk across the border?
Well, something else President Trump wants to see is a smaller federal workforce, which is why we've seen this administration offering buyouts that tens of thousands of people, we understand, have signed up for to leave the government by the end of this month. That deadline now obviously extended until Monday. But even if not enough people take it, the administration has suggested they're still going to be trimming down a lot of these federal agencies. What ultimately will that do to the labor market? As you mentioned, government jobs in your very first answer.
Right. Well, I have, the utmost admiration for anybody who wants to take President Trump's deal and have 9 months of vacation and move to a different kind of job afterwards. And there's a lot of opportunities to do that. And the federal workforce, as everybody knows, it's very difficult to trim the federal workforce. And so President Trump is offering this buyout opportunity, and he wants to make it more efficient. I mean, if you have a private sector company that doesn't do a good job, it goes out of business and those workers find other positions to go to. That's not the same in the government, where people just keep jobs even if they're not doing a good job. And I have to say most government workers are doing a great job. But for those that are not, it's very difficult to get rid of them.
Well, and we do understand that might be the next stage of this, that they've asked for a list of low-performing employees, and that may be where some of this culling happens from here. But I just, the notion of a smaller federal workforce overall, is that going to lead to some messiness in the economic data that we could receive in the next several months?
I think this is going to be swamped by low electricity prices, leading to more manufacturing coming from Europe. I mean, here we're going to get rid of net zero. They have net zero in Europe and in the United Kingdom, driving prices higher, deindustrializing. So if we could reindustrialize to pick up some of those jobs from these European companies, we're going to be doing great.
We got other data today as well in the form of University of Michigan consumer sentiment, which actually hit a 7-month low, in part because inflation expectations for the next year picked up to more than 4%. There's concern around tariffs here, specifically on the part of American consumers. It seems we've heard from plenty of people close to Trump or aligned with his kind of economic thinking that tariffs, if anything, would be a one-time price increase versus something persistently inflationary. But if people expect inflation and inflation expectations start to run away, will that not have the same effect ultimately? Will they not start then demanding things like higher wages, and we see this trickle back into the labor market as well?
Well, President Trump has shown that he wants to use tariffs as a negotiating tool. So he put the tariffs on Canada and Mexico. Then Canada and Mexico said they would increase border security, so he took off the tariffs. China, he left the tariffs on at 10%, but China is very much dependent on its exports to the United States for its economic growth. It might very well swallow some of these tariffs. And in China, China subsidizes energy, labor with slave labor and forced labor in Xinjiang, capital with low interest rate loans. I mean, Kaylee, did you know that China is selling a car for $13,000 in Europe? BYD, the major auto company exporter, for $13,000 in Europe. China is subsidizing and undercutting its industries. We spend money on providing Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, housing vouchers. We keep people living well. They take their government money and they subsidize their companies to undercut ours and European companies. Volkswagen layoffs in 3 plants, partly because of these cheap Chinese vehicles. We don't want that here.